Now, whether you're receiving funding through various tax credits, utility incentive programs, or you're required to use green building for code, or you and your clients just really want to do the right thing and ensure the project is built better, green building certifications give you guidance and resources to help you achieve sustainable outcomes in your projects, whether those are new construction or home improvements, renovations, and whether they're single family, multifamily, mixed use, or mid-rise. I've consulted and helped verify many projects using all the different green building certification programs I'm going to talk about here today, and even others not listed here. And so really what I want to do is continue to share with you all and the public at a high level what I know about each of these programs and help you yourselves and help others make more informed decisions on which program to select when you're having a green certification project be done. And I also want to stress that even when it's not required, you should ultimately consider selecting one for all project types. And I want to stress that importance as well. Now, before we get started, I wanted to let everyone know that we're onboarding new board members. And so we're looking to build our capacity at our institute. So who better than our audience of you, those of you who attend our sessions, you know us well. We'd potentially love to have you on board. So greenhomeinstitute.org/get-involved/join the board on our website there under the Get Involved tab. And you can look at the application and the commitment you'd be making. We would love to consider your additional support and ideas. And then also, before we get started, a huge thanks to our platinum sponsor this year, Rheem. Rheem has the ProTerra that offers a 240-volt hybrid heat pump water heaters, which work by taking heat out of the air to heat water at 400% efficiency and ensure a constant flow of hot water. They also have the 120-volt system that can easily replace traditional gas-fired units without the need for expensive electrical upgrades. I've been using the Rheem heat pump water heater now for 5 years, and I have constant hot water and lower carbon usage. They have leak detection, smart time of use controls, app access. And if you're not ready yet, they also have traditional electric water heaters that have the time of use settings to also help decarbonize and connect with utility programs to save money in higher energy rate times. So learn more at greenhomeinstitute.org/Rheem HPWH. So again, welcome everyone to Comparing the Residential Green Building Rating Systems, an introduction. This course is brought to you by the GreenHome Institute. The GreenHome Institute is a nonprofit with a mission to empower people to make healthier and more sustainable choices in the renovation and construction of the places we live. Today, I will be your moderator and, today I'll be your speaker as well as your moderator. My name is Brett Little, and I am the education manager here at the GreenHome Institute. And I have led consultations on hundreds of green building projects here at our organization through direct green rating and as well as consulting through design, through construction, and through final submission stage on many different project types. And before we get started, a quick reminder that most of our sessions are approved for multiple continuing education units, including this one, which is approved for all 5 pillars of green in our Certified Green Home Professional designation. AIA Health, Welfare, and Safety may make it applicable to your state-based design or contractor license. Make sure you grab that 5-digit passive house code that's sent to you at the end. Make sure you're here the entire time of the CEU hour and that you're logged in appropriately with the name you want on your certificate. And you check your spam for your certs at gutenbergcerts.com to receive your continuing ed here and the 5-digit code for our live session. All right, so comparing the residential green building certification programs, before you can understand the green rating systems, you need to have a basic foundational knowledge of what we call the 5 pillars of green. And ultimately, all the green rating systems, no matter what their categories are called, in the end, behind the engine, behind the scenes, are these 5 pillars of residential green building rating systems. So let's just take a look at a very high level at what each of those are and what you can expect to see in these programs. The first is energy, and it's simply how we save ourselves and our clients operational energy usage, how we reduce utility bills. That should lead to lower carbon emissions and reduce stress on the grid while making the places we live healthier and more comfortable. The goal is to eventually ensure full decarbonization of all homes and reach zero carbon usage when feasible and practical. Now, while energy is the biggest focus for the interest in many of these programs, the reality is if we only focus on energy, we actually could harm people's health in their homes. So in addition to that, people, I think, tend to respond more to health and comfort in being motivated than they do by energy savings directly. And so health is also about comfort, and oftentimes health gets confused with indoor air quality. But what you'll see if you go, look at further information on green building, you'll see health goes far beyond just air quality and into all aspects of health. Now, materials look first and foremost at keeping water out of homes and buildings to stop, rot and let the buildings last longer. But it also looks at embodied carbon, sustainable features, waste diversion, life cycle assessments, and location of sourcing. Oftentimes, when it comes to existing home programs, like weatherization programs, funding is deferred on our existing housing stock when they have durability deficiencies. And so people can't get access to funding resources when their homes are falling apart. That's why the green building programs are even more important. Water plays a key role in green building, from quality, stormwater mitigation, and keeping it out of the building. But in this case, we're talking about the water pillar focusing on water conservation exclusively. Many places are in drought, water bills are going up, so it's important to have these conversations no matter where you're at to save water, which helps with your green building programs. And then finally, place is the most out there, sometimes abstract idea. It's the idea of having a sense of place. How is your project impacting the immediate area around the home and building, around the neighborhood, the larger community and city, and even the planet at large? Most of the green building programs, one way or another, are requiring you think through having this sense of place of where your project is located. Now, ultimately, to understand these ideas more fully, we encourage you to take our Certified Green Home Professional Designation training, which gives you the foundational knowledge and helps you be prepared for many of these green building programs. We're working with many of our members who can take it for free, and other agencies to help train professionals and even community members on these topics. And so we can lead various trainings on them. Now, what you'll find is the backbone to these green building programs are the energy ratings, labels, and scores. And so we'll briefly go over those today, but we have further training and resources on comparing the energy rating systems so you can understand those, before you start fully diving into green building. So when it comes to residential green building, the programs mostly known are LEED, National Green Building Standard, Enterprise Green Communities, and the Green Star Homes certification program. Now, before selecting a program, you may want to know more about who is delivering these programs and if their values align with your values and with your client's values. So let's go through each of them at a very high level. The first one is LEED, which stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. It's the most globally well-known standard out there. It's used across the planet to certify projects, and it's been certifying housing projects since 2005. LEED is managed both by the Green Business Certification Incorporated, GBCI, who runs their certification, as well as the United States Green Building Council, USGBC, which manages education and maintains and updates the system. The program is updated and through ballot initiatives among the members, but is not ANSI standard, so it cannot be comments from the general public are not typically taken into consideration, and it is not voted on by the general public. LEAD is powered by members, by sponsors, and by funding through the program. We are one of the original LEAD for Homes providers for the last 20 years, providing certification services now with projects across the entire planet. Currently, LEAD for residential is under LEAD version 4 and 4.1 and has not made any updates to move towards version 5 at this time. The program mostly focuses on new construction with some existing housing exceptions for LEED O&M and multifamily. Resources for LEED are on their online credit library, and you can search by the rating system and the version. The Home Innovations Research Lab is an independent subsidiary of the National Home Builders Association, and so they run the NGBS certification standard. NHAB is a lobbying and membership organization, tend to lobby to ultimately, significantly reduce or delay building codes. They have sponsors, they have members, and one really cool thing about them that we'll talk about a little bit later is they have their research lab to, ensure products meet sustainability standards. Their program is ANSI accredited, so the general public can actually comment and engage on improvements and changes to the program, unlike LEED. They have programs, different program certification resources that are set aside for single family, multifamily renovations, and new construction. So they have a different workbook and different pathways kind of built out for each of them. And you can check out their resources at ngbs.com, resources/certification tools, quick start guide. Enterprise Community Partners is an agency with multiple structures and several 501c3s, 501c4s, and some for-profit subsidiaries, as well as rental businesses and a foundation. They advocate for affordable housing. They lobby the government to improve affordable housing. They give out grants. They even manage development of their own projects. They're tied heavily into the low-income housing tax credit project programs across the U.S. They have set-asides for how to manage urban versus rural projects, new construction versus substantial renovation versus moderate renovation are all different considerations in their program. You can check more out about them at greencommunitiesonline.org, 2020 criteria, templates, and certification. They tend to work with their partners directly to upgrade their program and will be typically upgrade their program every 6 years or so. And then finally, there is the Green Star certification program. It is part of our agency. We're a nonprofit. We're funded through certification fees, sponsors, members, grants. We have our Green Star program is managed internally, but we seek input from our members and our users to upgrade it. It's heavily focused on moving our millions of existing housing stock forward to achieve sustainable outcomes. However, it does work on new construction and multifamily. We just certified multiple new and existing multifamily projects where there are some subsidies for them, for example, in Minnesota. So one thing we've built for you all is we have an open source public resource that we keep updated in real time that compares at a high level each of these green building programs. And so here's a direct link to that, and it's linked in the handouts and everything, so you can look at that after the session. It also compares below the green programs, the energy programs, which we'll take a look at it. It was initially designed at first to help people manage the low-income housing tax credit requirements in Michigan specifically. However, again, it's just a very high-level detail of each of the main programs and what you can expect to either have to do or get bonus points to do. And we're going to go into detail into all of these today, but this is a quick cheat sheet and we keep it up to date, and people give us feedback on it. So if you have any suggestions on how to improve it, we're always looking for better ways to do that. So ultimately, every green program has mandatory requirements and bonus points. And as we go through this session, what we're going to do is we're going to organize the programs based on what is required at the top versus what is choice-based and optional in points at the bottom. And then some of the intricacies and the gray world that green lives in, where we place some of them in the middle. So when you see the program logos, remember the ones on the bottoms are point-based and the ones on the top are mandatory, focused on technical issues. So for example, here we have the National Green Building Standard program on the bottom, and we have that because it has the least amount of mandatory requirements, but the most amount of voluntary points. And one of the other unique things about them is that they increase the number of points you need in each of the categories. Silver, gold, emerald is their top category in each of the 5 pillars of green, which is a unique thing about their program. So kind of this, change this, this mandatory. So they have no mandatories, but you can chase points in each of those areas. So that makes them a little bit different. In contrast, at the top, we have the Enterprise Green program, which is heavily requirement-based and fewer choice options for achieving the programs. So really, here's the thought. The difference is between the two and in the middle there is, what is it that you want to do? Is it that you want to spend a lot of time making a lot of different choices and decisions? That's Home Innovations Lab. You get to make a lot of choices. You're spending a lot of time trying to figure out what to do. Whereas Green Communities, you're like, just tell me what to do and I'll do that, right? Just tell me and I'll get it done. And so it really depends on where you're coming at, what your time availability is. And again, LEAD and our Green Star program kind of fall in the middle of choice-based versus requirements, when it comes to that. So one of the so on that note, I wanted to discuss and jump into our Green Star program and slightly how it's different, because it actually has no points in it at all, unlike the other programs. There are no points. It's not a point game like LEAD, NGBS, or even Enterprise. But we have thresholds and badges. So right now, I'd like to briefly, I gave you a resource handout and I'm dropping it in the chat. And for those of you watching the recording, you have access to it. But why don't we open that up and I will kind of show you all here briefly what I am talking about. So here is our Green Star online manual. And in this manual, it has all the information you need about the program. You can kind of drop it down and read more information about what's required. We don't sell anything. There's nothing that you have to pay for. It's all just there, and we give away all the information. But if you click on the latest workbook here and open that up, this link right here, you will get into the workbook, which is what I want to point out to here and how it shows you how we have no point system. So when you open this up, what you can do is, this is the master version, but you got to go to File and then make a copy, and then you generate your own version of this. And if you hate working in Google Sheets, you can download it as well if you want to. But that is not, but it breaks some of the functionality, but you can do that if you want. So what I want to show you here is the second tab, the workbook tab. And this is where you can see real quickly, if you look at just column G, let's say we're looking at home or multifamily renovation projects. If we're just looking at column G, you can see here, these are all the items in column D that you need to achieve to get certified. And then once you've achieved all those, here is all the things you need to achieve in column D to get to the silver level. And then here are all the things you need to achieve in column D to get to the gold level. And so it just stacks, and it's just good, better, best, and the best. There is no point chasing whatsoever within this program. It's just good, better, best, and the best. And then again, you're looking at it, these are the renovation categories, these are the new construction categories, so depending on what your project is, you just sort one out versus the other. And then if you have multifamily or attached housing, there are a couple differences in those. And so again, you would sort this out if it's not multifamily or attached, but if it is, you would keep that in there to make sure you're also addressing those items that need to be addressed on multifamily. So again, this is just an example. We'll jump back into it here in a little bit, but as another example. But I wanted to show you that as, again, how it is a bit of a different program, and it is not, point chasing ultimately like the other rating systems. All right. So before we get into each of the pillars of green and the technical information that's important to know, the most important decisions that impact sustainability in homes are done early on in the design stage. And then it's ultimately, in most cases, all downhill from there. So for existing homes, that ideally means getting a green home inspection and an energy audit that is done on the home first. For larger multifamily buildings, this is called a lot of times the ASHRAE Level 2 audit. In addition to having that for both new and existing, it's important to have a multi-stakeholder team involved in communicating early and often to achieve the sustainable outcomes. So the builder, the HVAC, the plumber, landscape, renewable energy, electrician. Sometimes that's, persons wearing multiple hats on smaller projects. But having them all engaged and working together and understanding their role is very important in the programs. So for LEED, this is usually called the LEED design shred, which is worth points. It's not required. For enterprise, this is mandatory and must be completed and documented before any construction begins whatsoever. In general, if you do not do this in any program, even though you don't see NGBS or Green Star showing up here, your certification goals will most likely fail without good planning. Now, for both new and existing homes, we also look at plan specifications drawings to determine the green and sustainability aspects of them. We then determine the potential score and prerequisites that will be met. Enterprise requires that this be done several months before construction and submitted to them for approval. For LEED, it is required to do the preliminary rating, though it could literally happen after the project is built. However, LEED does require ventilation and calculations be approved in the early design stage, and energy models for larger mid-rise buildings must be submitted and approved by GBCI in the early design stage. This is also a great time to score your project out in the design review meetings, the preliminary ratings, to determine which system makes the most sense. And then also have a backup plan, because we have a lot of teams that switch from one green program to the next midstream or even at the end of a project, because sometimes things change or you just realize, one made more sense than the other. So scoring them out in multiple projects, I think, makes a lot of sense. Now, enterprise requires you survey the existing residents or community at large, as well as review county health issues and determine how the project will address the residents' concern and potential health risks in that local region. It must be done ideally before design, but ultimately can be done in the design stage. This is an extra credit within the LEED program. Now, in the same community survey for enterprise, they also require a climate risk assessment be completed, and high-risk issues must be addressed in the project design and construction. For Green Star, we require the levels, require a climate risk assessment, and we require that action be taken at higher levels of Green Star to address those risks, whether they're high risks, medium, or low climate risks. So for example, in West Michigan here, we have a very high wind risk. And so having, wind resistant shingles and building envelopes designed for wind load, very important. And we had that, unfortunately happen to us just the other week with several tornadoes being spawned in our community, more than we've ever seen in our state on average, all in one day. The other thing to point out is LEED only requires a flood risk assessment using the FEMA resources. And so you cannot build in a 100-year flood zone with LEED unless you have additional provisions in place to do that. But LEED does not require you look at any of your other climate risks, at least under this current version 4. Now, during construction, the project, it's important to ensure that there's timely and consistent communication among the architect, builders, and subcontractors. This has practical implications to ensure inspection milestones are not missed and ensure sustainability is maintained during the build. For example, last-minute changes to plans and specs occur due to issues with material shortages or inflation costs or worker shortages. And these may derail your certification. So taking action immediately is important to resolve the issue and maintain the standard or come up with an alternative approach. Enterprise mandates you do this. LEED gives you an extra credit for it. And again, I have to stress, even if the program doesn't require it, it's a best practice. And the other systems, you won't be successful, I don't believe. So much success if you don't implement those protocols. So let's get into the 5 pillars of green now. When it comes to energy conservation, most green programs and points and requirements are in the energy pillar section of the program. Now, currently, National Green Building Standard is the only program that allows a prescriptive pathway, meaning you do not need energy modeling, but instead just need to meet these, what I would call highly assertive or aggressive energy requirements for each of the measures of energy efficiency, building shell, HVAC, plumbing, and appliances. And those are different between single family, multifamily, new, and existing. But you can meet these standards based on their requirements and not have to do any energy modeling if you don't want to. However, most projects use the Energy Rating Index through the branded HERS Index program or other various alternatives to the HERS Index. And so you can just see here briefly kind of how this works. One neat thing about Home Innovations Lab is they kind of tell you where you need to be on the ERI scale to achieve bronze, silver, gold, or platinum. And our Green Star program does that as well. And it actually kind of ebbs between 70. I needed to update this chart, but we kind of follow a similar pathway for new construction as well. Actually, I believe starting at 55, we require a HERS of 55, going all the way down to 40 for our platinum level. LEED kicks in at around 70, which is in line with Energy Star, and then just gives you a bunch of points as you go further down. And then Enterprise does the same thing as LEED, following the Energy Star, and additional points as you get more energy efficient going down the scale. In addition, our Green Star program for renovations allows you to use a simpler program called the DOE Home Energy Score. We're a partner of theirs. And so by achieving a 5 or higher, you can certify to our Green Star program, and then higher levels get, correlate with higher things. In theory, the Home Innovations Lab doesn't actually mandate any kind of energy rating program. They kind of keep it open-ended. So you could use this for them. And what they're looking at, again, are cost savings and energy savings instead of a score. For mid-rise multifamily buildings using ASHRAE 90.1, you can kind of see here where LEED version 4 falls and falls in the 2010 standard, Green Communities in the 2013 standard, version 4.1 multifamily in the 2016 standard. Again, Green Star and is only looking at peer energy use. We don't have any ASHRAE compliance, but I think if we got more multifamily work, we could consider it. But we're just looking at peer energy use per year. And then Home Innovations Lab, again, allows you to take a much more choice-based approach using energy use or cost savings. What we typically tell teams is to use the Enterprise Green resource for 90.1 to help them figure out their cost savings for Home Innovations Lab. It's a very helpful resource, and we've used it multiple times on our projects. So besides certifying appliances, the Energy Star program certifies homes and building construction practices with a modest energy rating index or HERS rating. Unfortunately, currently Energy Star is likely to be shut down by October or November 2025, I believe. So we're not quite sure what impact that will have on the programs that rely on it. Enterprise green communities will be the big concern for them. They mandate for their new construction that you achieve Energy Star certification. LEED, however, is a little more safe because they only require you achieve the outcomes of Energy Star and meet the requirements using the documentation and energy modeling, but that you don't actually have to meet Energy Star. And Home Innovations Lab just has an alternative approach to their bronze standard if you get Energy Star certified, and that may be updated to DOE 0. So this is another unfortunate situation where on the positive side, the green building programs, they're going to still exist long after Energy Star because they're not government run. So we encourage everyone now to start shifting over to the green building programs, as unfortunately it appears Energy Star may be on its way out. But also contact your representatives and let them know what Energy Star means to you. Maybe there's an opportunity to still maintain the program one way or another. Now, to generate a HERS rating and Energy Star rating, you need to do something called a total leakage test to outdoors, which ultimately means running a blower door test like we have on the right, along with a duct blaster test, what we have on the left. And that will give you a metric of basically how your ductwork is just moving air right outside, right? Just wasting energy and moving it outside. If you have boiler systems or mini split systems, you can obviously throw that duct leakage test outside, and then we're just looking only at the blower door. LEED requires this no matter what, even on renovations. Enterprise mandates it on new construction, but likely you need it on renovations as well. And it's just, nice to have things that help you get more points in Green Star and Home Innovations Lab. Ultimately, inspections must occur on every project to get the energy ratings and the green ratings. Slab inspections, mid-construction inspections to see behind the drywall and siding, and then final testing. LEED and National Green Building Standard require a third-party green rater or green verifier to do all of this. Enterprise and Green Star have more provisions for a rater or project team to work together on being able to do this. Failures in these stages require retesting, and sometimes if things are missed in the mid-construction, the project could ultimately be uncertifiable. Again, slab inspections, pre-drywall inspections, and final inspections are all fairly normal, and test-ins on renovations to get a baseline of where you're starting. And in fact, for National Green Building Standard, they have almost a biggest loser type approach where on an existing building, you can do that initial energy model and test and audit, and then accrue savings 10%, 25%, 35% on an existing building based on that baseline to see, again, like a biggest loser approach almost, to get your points based on where the building was at and then where it is after renovation. Home Innovations Lab is the only program that allows that approach. All the other ones require you hit a certain energy target, even on renovations. They don't let you count from where you're at to where you want to be as well. And then ultimately, when it comes to these programs, we need to achieve net zero. And so now there are zero energy certifications. We have our own internal zero energy certification, GHI, which is a badge in our Green Star program. We have LEED has a zero certification, National Green Building Standard has a net zero badge, and then the DOE Zero Energy Ready certification program by the Department of Energy, assuming that's not canned as well, also has, additional resources. And so again, on that comparison list that I gave you all, if you scroll down, we also compare, and we've done webinars on comparing these different programs, and how they, how you might pick one or the other if you want to achieve a zero energy. And some questions to ask here is whether you have to achieve true site-based zero energy, so you have to have solar power on the site. and whether it has to net out at the end of the year, called net zero, where you consume as much energy as you use, or whether you can buy renewable energy credits and carbon offsets and have that be part of your pathway. Each of these programs have different requirements there, so you need to know what those are. And then finally, we highly advise you aim for passive house in all of your projects, which will, in most cases, max out all of your energy points and requirements in all of the green programs. Most passive house works well with all of these green programs, and sometimes you get bonus points for them. But essentially what passive house is continuous insulation in the walls, airtight construction, thinking through your solar gains, balanced, smart, energy efficient ventilation, minimal heating and cooling, ideally all electric, efficient lighting, and then you only need a little bit of energy to put the solar panels on and go net zero. They certify renovations. We're doing a webinar on that next week, and we'll have it recorded. They certify new construction. They certify mixed use, multifamily, and even commercial buildings. But we highly stress that you take passive house and use it as your main approach to certification. All right, so that was energy, and now we're going to look at the other 4 pillars of green, and we're going to look at health for our buildings. And so when it comes to health, we're looking at bath fans, supply air testing, and whole home indoor air quality ventilation systems. LEED requires, and Energy Star requires at least 50 CFM flow in the bath fan, and 100 CFM on the hood range, all tested by a third party. Green Star is the same as LEED. However, at the lower levels, instead of the hood range, we allow an electric stove trade-off. So you can get rid of that hood range and you can do an electric stove instead, or an induction stove instead at the lower levels. Home Innovations requires on the bath fans is required, but they have points for more efficient bath fans, but there's no indication that testing is needed. However, having makeup air for high 400 CFM hood ranges is points in NGBS and required in LEED. And ultimately, we're also looking at achieving the ASHRAE 62.2 standard. So that is basically somehow showing you have continuous or intermittent ventilation within the building. And so that is required on LEED, it's required on Enterprise for new construction, and it's required on our Green Star program at the higher levels. Again, Home Innovations Lab is just giving out points for having these continuous ventilation type systems in there. And then again, for LEED, making sure that it's being tested and that it's in compliance with the standard. Also, we want to make sure we have good filtered air. And so LEED and Green Star require at least 8 on the MERV filtration system. Enterprise, I should have their logo up here because for new construction, by default, they require 6 because of Energy Star, but they don't look at anything for renovations. LEED gives out extra points for a MERV 10 system, and National Green Building Standard gives out points, 2 points through up to MERV 13, and then 3 points for MERV 14 or higher. Green Star has a baseline requirement, so silver requires a MERV 10, gold requires MERV 13, platinum requires MERV 16. And then for NGBS and Green Star, we both require that static pressure test drop be completed to make sure that these higher MERV levels aren't degrading the systems. Also, when it comes to health, water heaters not only save energy, but they can ruin the health of a home. So LEED and Enterprise require that the water heaters either be electric or sealed combustion. Enterprise only requires this when they're being added, versus LEED is requiring this no matter what. Green Star requires that a test be done on naturally drafting water heaters for for renovations. And if they fail the combustion test, then you have to add sealed combustion or electric water heaters. National Green Building Standard just wants to make sure these things aren't located in conditioned space and that they actually give more points for sealed or power vented gas appliances, and they give less points for electric or heat pump systems uh, as well. So that's a little interesting and a different approach for Home Innovations Lab. Reducing air leakage saves energy, but it also improves health in multifamily and attached housing. So basically what we're looking at are requirements for something called CFM at 50 per square foot of building enclosure. And so LEED requires 0.3 or 0.23 depending on the size of the unit. They give points at 0.15. Green Star requires 0.5, 0.4, 0.23, then 1.5. Enterprise looks at this depending on the version of Energy Star that is being used. And they have different provisions for, new construction versus existing housing. And it kind of lines up with LEED pretty well. Home Innovations Lab in the energy section just requires a visual inspection for air leakage, though they have different rules for 4+ story buildings, estimated around 4 air changes per hour, and then more points for air leakage reductions as well. And then also when it comes to these green building programs, they look at low emission materials, paints, flooring, anything you can think of. And so the way this works is that Enterprise actually mandates many of the products you're installing in paints and adhesives and sealants have some kind of low emission certification on them. We, for Green Star, kind of require that at higher levels. And then have badges, and then Home Innovations Lab and LEED essentially just say, look, you can get all these various points for all of these various materials and paints and sealants and caulks that are certified to these various low emission standards, usually approved through the California Air and Resource Board. And as I mentioned, health is way beyond air quality, but I spent a lot of time on air quality just for this sake of this, because most of the points for the green building systems are built into air quality, but they also have points for sound and accessibility and other areas. In fact, National Green Building Standard has a whole workbook and resources for accessibility, which is very cool on achieving higher levels of accessibility within your project. Okay, so now we're looking at the materials section. And first and foremost, like I mentioned, these programs all stress durability and, approach durability from various different ways. Enterprise Green, LEED, and Green Star, especially for our new construction, hitch themselves to the Energy Star water management program. And then Home Innovations Lab just has various provisions and requirements and optional points. But essentially what we're trying to do is make sure you've got water staying out from top to bottom, flashing detail on the roof, on the windows, gutters, downspouts draining away from the building being well draining sandy soils, or the building being the home being up and sloped away. There's various different methods. We don't have time to go into them all. We have them in further trainings, but they all really kind of approach them from a somewhat, here are some requirements, here are some extra points. It's kind of a middle ground really for all the programs. In interior durability is very important in these programs. We're looking at requirements for entryway, not having carpeting, requirements in the kitchen, not having carpeting, laundry room, bathrooms, again, just having good durability on the floor. LEED and Enterprise Green require either a non-paper face backer behind the shower and tub surround, or no backer whatsoever and keeping it empty. Home Innovations Lab just require an ASTM rating on tile backing in wet areas. And our Green Star program just requires this at the higher levels of certification or when a bathroom renovation is being done. Again, making sure systems in homes don't leak. Only Enterprise, LEED, and Green Star require that there's drain pans underneath devices that can leak, or steel braided hoses behind washers, anything that's going to potentially leak and damage and cause a durability failure. At least these three programs have mandatory provisions for that. And then looking at sustainable requirements, if wood is being used, LEED requires FSC certification. Green Star requires it if it's tropical wood, and then Home Innovations Lab and all the programs besides Enterprise have provisions for extra points for having some kind of certified lumber that is more sustainably certified. And when it comes to more sustainable materials, all the residential green building programs reward for selecting materials in the building, such as framing, windows, insulation, roofing, flooring, and etc. They all have sustainability attributes that can happen. In addition, there's a misnomer about LEED that they certify products, but they do not. However, the Home Innovations Lab does certify products by testing them and then giving them a certification to verify that they meet sustainable attributes. And in addition to that unique feature is our Green Star Home Certification Program is the only one to require an embodied carbon review of materials during a new construction project, and then require additional reduction in embodied carbon of the materials at higher levels of certification. Again, another misnomer about LEED is that they mandate waste reduction. They don't. LEED and Home Innovations Lab give out points for construction waste reduction. Enterprise does mandate waste reduction either by having 75% of your total volume of waste recycled, or just by selecting two types of waste. So it could be 100% of cardboard or 100% of metal or concrete. Pick two and recycle it 100%, and that's how their program works. And LEED gives points for those kinds of things, as well. All right, we're getting into the second last pillar here, and then we'll get into questions. Water conservation, again, very important, and it is required to think through in all the green programs. The very first thing to do is to make sure that our buildings aren't leaking. That's also a durability measure. And so Green Star and LEED have provisions to mandate water leak testing be required. However, Enterprise doesn't require it. They give you points. And Home Innovation Lab actually does something a little different. They don't have anything for water leak testing, but they give you points. And so does LEED. Actually, they have an innovation credit for this, for having an ongoing leak detection monitoring system in place that actually would detect a leak and alert the user when it occurs. So that's very cool, but again, not required, no points, and it's not something we see often be used. Now, every program has a performance and prescriptive approach to water conservation. LEED and Enterprise Green must use 20% less water based on a baseline on their internal water tools. However, Enterprise requires this happen, while as LEED gives this as an optional pathway. And the other difference between Enterprise and LEED is that the Enterprise program only looks at indoor water usage in their modeling software or their system, whereas LEED actually looks at outdoor water usage as well. Now, National Green Building Standard uses their own water rating index, looking at indoor and outdoor, I believe, and you can input a bunch of data to get your WRI score, and then you can achieve certification based on where your score is at. And then our Green Star tool, if you go back to our Green Star workbook and look at the tab, we have something called the Home Water Score, which is a 0 through 10. and we require at least a 2 on the home water score if you're taking the performance pathway or higher levels for higher levels of certification. So again, here's an example out of our Green Star workbook. A lot of the green programs work this way. This is the prescriptive path. And so typically when you're taking the prescriptive path, you're looking at a good, better, best an approach to gallons per flush for toilets, good, better, best approach to gallons per minute in bathroom aerators and shower heads. And then you might be looking at water sense certification, which LEED requires if you're taking their prescriptive pathway. And then you might be looking at Energy Star certification for appliances, for which also allows you to know what their water usage is. And so Enterprise is the only certification program that no longer has a prescriptive approach to achieving your water performance points or water outcomes. For landscaping, Enterprise requires you use native, adaptive, and ideally drought-tolerant plants when planting new landscape. When it comes to LEED Enterprise and Home Innovations Lab, there's just a bunch of points available, different optional pathways on how to reduce water, both through more sustainable irrigation approaches and through more sustainable approaches to how you plant plants, where you plant plants, and what those plants are. And so they offer all various different pathways. And then, like I said, they have a prescriptive approach, or you have the performance approach. In the case of Green Star and LEED, we use the EPA's outdoor water budget tool to help you determine your outside water usage. And last but not least, but certainly kind of least, is the place-based approach to our program, the green programs. So what does this mean? During construction, we're trying to prevent pollution from damaging the stormwater and polluting the rest of the community. You don't want your construction site polluting the community. And so LEED has provisions for this and they mandate it. Enterprise has provisions for this, especially for new construction, not as much for renovation. And Home Innovations Lab just gives reward points for not polluting the site and the community when you build. As far as ongoing stormwater management throughout the life of the building, Enterprise requires at least achieving the 60th percentile in rain captured in an engineer's report, and then has extra points for getting higher. LEED and National Green Building Standard give points for meeting stormwater mitigation features or using the percentile engineering approach through an engineer. Green Star gives out a badge for having a very high percentile reduction of stormwater mitigation for your site. And also this goes hand in hand usually with the heat island effect, which all of the green programs except Enterprise have points for mitigating heat island, which again usually has some of the same ways you measure that and monitor that as you do for stormwater. Not always the same, but there are a lot of crossovers there. Enterprise is going to require on new construction that you're avoiding building next to wetland. In fact, we have many projects we have to switch over to LEED or NGBS because they've built too close to wetlands, not building on prime soils, farmlands, and then building in more urban areas with infrastructure that's already in place. Home Innovations Lab and LEED reward you for building in these areas and for not building on wetlands or near wetlands or prime soils or all that. Enterprise has some provisions to make sure that you have good walkability requirements, so bike lanes, connectivity to the community and resources, bus lanes. If it's an urban project, if it's rural, they don't have those requirements. And then LEED and Green Star has badges for walkability, and then LEED gives out a lot of points for just having access to all of these ways to have alternative transportation within the project. Another aspect of place is having resilience to pest entry to projects. And so Enterprise and LEED especially for their multifamily, require having pest management plans and contracts in place. And then they give LEED and Home Innovations Lab give all these different provisions and opportunities on how to avoid pest entry and get extra points for, implementing those, especially if you're in areas that might be more prone to pests like termites and other things. And then also density. You want, all the green programs reward you for packing in more units per, per acreage. And so, the more units you can get, the more points you can get per acreage. And Enterprise actually has requirements for better density thresholds when building in the urban setting areas that are designated urban settings. And then finally, before we get into questions, one thing that's really important with all these programs is that you have some kind of manual on how to operate that building, whether it's an individual homeowner understanding how to operate the systems in their home, or a property manager trying to understand their buildings. If we build and certify projects green but don't give people the operational know-how on how to maintain it, the buildings won't be maintained and they'll lose efficiency and health. And so LEED and Enterprise have pretty robust requirements, and Enterprise especially, they're my favorite. They have great resources to develop these operations and maintenance manuals and trainings for the tenants and trainings for the building managers. Green Star requires this at the silver level or higher, not at the basic level. And Home Innovations is the kind of oddball here. They have some provisions, but for the most part, they don't have much in place. And they have a la carte menu that rewards you several points depending on how many things you've built into your operations manual and your trainings as well. So with that, we're going to get into questions, and I'm going to stick around for more time if you have questions. Otherwise, you are approved if you have to get going, if you've been here throughout the whole live session for the CEU hour. But if you want to stay, I'll be sticking around to jump into your questions. But as a reminder, this session is being recorded, and we will send you, we'll have it posted on our YouTube channel in the next couple days, or you can go there right now and click subscribe and click the notifications, and you'll receive update when it's available. In addition, if you're watching this session in the future, take your quiz with an 80% passing rate to receive your Con Ed. And again, if you've been here for the entire CEU hour, you are approved and all set to go. Make sure you take that survey that pops up when you close out, or it'll be emailed to you later. And then check your spam for certs@gutenbergcerts.com to receive your continuing ed. And make sure the name you have in your Zoom profile is written there, because that'll be what's printed on your certificate. And please take that survey, even if you don't need CEUs. We want to hear from you. I want to get feedback. I love to hear, your constructive criticism. So again, I'm here to take some questions, but otherwise a huge thanks to our volunteers, our executive director, Jose Reyna, our over 400 members. We're trying to get to 500 for our 25th anniversary this year, so I hope you'll support us. And our sponsors who allow us to do what we do: Ream, Build Equinox, Serve, Tamarack. Huge thanks to them to allow us this support. So with that, I am going to jump into questions. And for those of you watching this in the recording, I will answer questions in the comments here in the future. So I appreciate the first question that came in here is about the no build option being considered first. I really appreciate that because, I think there are, we need to see more benefits and resources being pumped into the idea of renovating homes, adaptive reuse, and office conversions. And a lot of the green building rating systems will reward you a lot of points in the sustainable materials section for reusing buildings. And sometimes the provisions and requirements in the green building programs are a lot lighter when you're renovating or reusing an existing building. So absolutely, I think whether, I think all the green building programs in some way are designed to encourage reuse of buildings over new construction. But here's the reality. I don't know how many office conversions we have in our country and on our planet to fulfill the need of the massive housing shortage we have. I think we have no choice but to build. And so in those cases, in the place pillar, like I mentioned, you see those provisions, those extra bonus points for building near infrastructure that's already in place. And that helps benefit many of your program, your green points, and is also tied to other tax credits. So yes, I would hope in all cases the no build option is considered first. But the reality is we have to build more. I don't see any way around it. So why not build, ultimately better. And I'm not sure about the stretch code comment, so you'll have to elaborate, but certainly I think some agencies are using stretch codes and just requiring green building provisions as part of their code. Why is Energy Star and Zero Energy programs not there? Energy Star was the first registration program in the country. Yeah, Armando, you'll have to elaborate, and I know you asked this question a while ago. But I should be clear, we were talking about the green programs today, not the energy programs. I have different trainings we've done on the energy programs, but no, we're talking about the green programs. The energy programs are not green programs, and they shouldn't be conflated as such. They don't hit all 5 pillars of green. I think Passive House comes really close, and I consider them co-equals in many ways. And honestly, wouldn't blame anyone for using Passive House versus LEED. I think you should use both Passive House and green together at the same time. But Passive House is, one of those areas where I'll give them credit to being so close to the green programs and having really a lot of the more important items of it that, they're close to it. So I'll give them that. If energy is off grid, is that an automatic zero HERS rating, no grid? No, unfortunately, that's a great point, Colin, and that's why you'll want to check out our training on comparing the green or the energy rating programs and how those programs work together and how they function. And we have further trainings on the energy rating index and the HERS index, because the HERS index is looking at efficiency first. So even if you're off grid, you still want to have an energy efficiency building, because if you're off grid, especially, you're going to then have to rely on very expensive systems, depending on what climate you're in, to maintain power and heat, especially in emergencies. And then if you have a climate issue where you have a heat wave or a cold wave, having those higher energy efficiency built into the shell, which shows up in your HERS rating, is going to be very important. So no, going off grid does not give you a zero HERS rating, thankfully. HERS is looking at efficiency first of the envelope, then the mechanical system. Now, yes, you could just buy a bunch of solar panels and hit a HERS zero that way. It would take an immense amount of solar if you built a poor building shell. So, we wouldn't recommend that. So. What are the incentives for builders and homeowners apart from energy efficient green building? Are there cash incentives for hitting these standards? Yeah, so low income housing tax credits, some of the Inflation Reduction Act provisions that will exist through the IRA homes rebates, the ones that aren't being repealed, local tax credits. So for example, in the city of Cincinnati, they give tax abatements. So we have a whole resource page on our website that show all these resources. And then we have another organizations we work with that show all the other resources that are out there. And partly we also need, folks like you to go to your local city, county, state, and even go to the federal government and say, hey, we want to build greener. We need resources to do it. And so we kind of need that sort of advocacy approach to, make that happen. Could you talk about everyone getting in touch with their government officials to keep IRA? Okay, so yeah, so again, I think it's very important, that if you want to see resources and benefits continue. The Inflation Reduction Act funds help with many of these green building programs. Right now, as I'm speaking as of this recording, and I don't know where it'll be in the future, but I assume it won't change. There's, looking at taking away in the United States Inflation Reduction Act benefits. So if those are important to you, getting out there and calling your representatives and your community and saying, hey, we want these benefits. They help, they bring in jobs, they help buildings to be more energy efficient, they help with increasing costs and resiliency, and they help us achieve the green rating system. So if that's important to you, go to your representatives and have those conversations, show them this webinar, whatever you need to do, whatever is important to you, you can make that happen. Like asbestos abatement costs in older homes, not to mention lead paint, renovation nightmares, how new construction is poised to change the energy paradigm forever with on-site. How will energy rating systems be replaced by whom? Yeah, so again, that's a good point. So, it's important to have, when you have renewable systems. And I just heard this story the other day. There was a housing agency that was planning, they always do solar in their tax credit work, which isn't required, but they were planning to put battery systems in, but the housing agency required, for good reason, that in order to maintain tax credits, they had to have a maintenance plan for all systems in their building. And so if they put battery systems into their building, they had to have a 10-year maintenance plan to replace those batteries. And batteries will probably last a lot longer, but they're only warranted that long. So they had to have built into their budgets the ability to fund the replacement of the batteries within 10 years. And so they couldn't figure that out. And so the tax credit agency said, look, we can't fund the batteries as part of your project. So what I'm getting at is you need to have, every building that gets built, we need to have these maintenance manuals. And we should know when replacements are happening, when warranties are up, who's making these replacements, and how much these replacements are going to cost. I know the future, we can't predict what will happen in 10 years, but we should be able to say, if everything kind of stays the same or changes slightly, when you go to replace a renewable energy system or an HVAC system, here's when it will need to be replaced. Here's how much it will cost. Here's who you call to do that. We're going to come in and swap it out. And that could even include product take-back systems. So that, is important of why we have this for our cars, right? There's no surprises. They tell you when to come in at your 10,000 miles, at your 20,000 mile, your 100,000 mile, right? Let's put it in our homes. When our homes reach, not miles, but years, you should be getting this service done, and it should be built right into the manual, and there should be no surprise. And we'll do a whole session on that. To answer your question, we're going to be doing Passive House Revive next week. So that's the renovation program through Passive House. So we'll keep this conversation going on green green building training. So, are there any other questions for me? Otherwise, we'll go ahead and wrap up. And then, like I said, this will be posted online. And I think the other important thing to mention is that we, do green building consultations and can help you figure out which project to choose. So if you go to our website, greenhomeinstitute.org, and you look at our project management, our consultation, we can help you, again, determine early on which program makes the most sense, who to work with, what professionals in your areas and raters to work with in your community, and, go from there. So we're here to help. We're a resource, and, we really appreciate your time. Would love to hear your feedback in the survey on how I can do this session better next time. But thank you all, and thanks to our members who are, making this happen. So we'll see you all next week on the next one. Take care and be well. Stay safe out there for those of you in the line of the windstorm. So goodbye.
Be sure to check out all of our courses available online that you can watch anytime and anywhere to pick up your CEUs. Before you go, make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube to get weekly updates and stay up to date on green building science courses, webinars, and home tours. Thanks again.